Thank you all for arranging a beautiful weather for me today. I really appreciate that. When I left Vermont, we had ice on our ponds, so it's kind of nice to see these green colors. I'm not quite sure what they're for. Can you hear me in the back okay? And Bryan, is the recording on? Very good. The other thing I would like is to make sure I have the right computer. That would be good. Otherwise, I'll be in for a surprise. Who here is twittering this right now? Oh, just a few. Well, keep tweeting, keep tweeting. You're not sure. Okay. Well, I'll try and give you something. I'll try and give you some to Twitter about. Who are you? Anais. And what do you study?
I'm studying theater.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I expect wonderful tweets from you. No pressure, no pressure. Now I know your name, Anais. You could be anybody. Oh, I'm Bryan Alexander. BRYANALEXANDER. If you search for the hashtag CWRU, you should also pick that up too. How many of you are on Facebook right now? See, the hands go up a little slower, you know, like, yeah. Well, you can status update as well if you'd like to. I'd like to hear from you. What I'm going to be doing for the next short period of time is talking to you about something called digital storytelling. And I have a couple of caveats before we get going. One is that this is a world which is now so enormously rich. It has so many examples, so much is going on, that I can only kind of give you a quick run through it. I can't show you everything. So if I miss something that is dear to you, please hold on to it. I want to hear examples by the end. We'll have plenty of time for that. Here's the second caveat. I'll go pretty quickly. Some people say I speak quickly. I can't judge this rationally anymore. But if I go too fast, if I use a word which makes no sense to you, that doesn't sound like English, or it sounds like it's a refugee from a Dr. Seuss book, or it's an acronym, or it doesn't have enough vowels, and you feel lost, hold on to that thought. I really want to hear from you, all right? I want to make sure that I don't lose people, even if they come in late. That's okay, please come in. There are lots of seats by the front, maximum embarrassment. So what I'd like to cover is a field that has changed drastically in the past 10 years. It was once a very specific, narrow thing. Now it has become a broad thing and has infected almost everyday parts of life. We'll start off by talking about storytelling and what that is, and then see how it morphs into social media, and then into gaming. Quick show of hands. How many of you would consider yourselves to be computer gamers? How many of you have ever played a computer game? How many of you have lives? Quick show of hands. Okay. Okay, good. Those of you who raised your hand, all three, that's very good. Those of you who raised your hands for the first two, welcome. You're among friends. This is a very geekish space here, so you can be free to be as geeky as you like. We'll cover all of these. To begin with, we don't have enough time to do too much of this. But when I ask what storytelling is, let me just recommend that you use this question on other people, strangers, old people, and children in particular. Because asking someone about storytelling is a kind of universal prompt. Everyone knows what a story is. Everyone has an idea about what a good story is. And everyone especially has an idea what a bad story is. I mean, even Twilight fans can figure out what stories are. That was interesting. Some people do. Thank you, that's good. No one cried, that takes time. But storytelling is something which you can define in 1,000 different ways. And as a humanist, my job is to define things in many different ways. So let me just walk you through a few of these. You might recognize this triangle. You might not. This is a pretty famous document, although it's only 150 years old. It's called the Freytag triangle. It's a description of how a story should look, the structure of it. And you've all heard parts of this before. You begin with exposition, what's going on, where we are, rising action to a climax, and then a falling action and a denouement. In fact, this actually formed the plot basis for a pretty good film called Adaptation, which uses this as a plot device. So what's the story? Well, it looks like this. That's one answer. Another answer that I often get when I ask people, what is this story? Is they say, it's something about a person. It always involves, it connects with a person or it's about a person. So for example, I don't know if you've seen the subgenre of fake Facebook pages for things. So this is a Bill Gates page. Bill Gates just bought Azerbaijan. Restock, Tennessee. On his wall, Steve Jobs writes, "Remember that OS you made that was awesome? Yeah, neither do I." Steve Wozniak likes this. Bill Gates responds, "He belongs to networks like Microsoft, Harvard, and rich white people." You can have fun with this, but that's one way of defining a story. A story has to be about a person. And if it's not a person, it has to be a thing that's person-like. Like, say, the very great movie WALL-E, which is about two different persons that are robots. Another way of looking at it is that stories aren't about nouns, but they're about verbs. They're about things that happen. They're about what one does in life. They're about an event that happens. Or they're about a noun. They're about a person that's very important to the speaker. That's the way the Center for Digital Storytelling defines story. Another way of defining story is to say that actually stories come from myth, and that stories, especially great stories, tend to follow the same pattern. They're basically based on what this guy, Joseph Campbell, calls the hero's journey, and it always works like this. You have some nobody, preferably young, almost usually male, who is revealed to have a tremendous destiny. He has a great task he must accomplish. He tries to do it, fails miserably, and dies, or nearly dies. Gets himself up, comes back to life, and wins, and everything is glorious. This pattern, Campbell coined in this book, is widely used in Hollywood. And in fact, you can pay money to take classes that will teach you how to make scripts that follow this pattern. Some notable films have done this, namely Star Wars and New Hope. I want to put those aside and ask you a question instead. Maybe stories are really about mystery, what is not obvious. If stories were about something that was obvious, you would stop paying attention to them. I'll give you an example, a few first lines. This is a famous first line from science fiction. "The last man on Earth sat alone in a room. There was a knock at the door." You might feel a little chill or a little thrill at that point when you get that second sentence. There's a mystery. Who would you think is knocking at the door? Anybody? Whoop, clever. Sneaky and nice. Who else? What else? Well, it could be an alien, since I said science fiction. Could be the last woman who's wondering why he's in the room so long. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities. It's routinely parodied. It's a pretty common opening line. But I just want you to feel that little sense of surprise at that moment, because this doesn't explain itself. This obfuscates itself. This makes it unclear, and you want to find out what's happening next. Here's another example. You might recognize this. It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. It's the opening lines from 1984. And if you ever feel bad about writing, find a copy of the manuscript for this front page, because this is incredibly marked out. Orwell just went over it again and again and again, changing every single word. But that little surprise of 13. How can clocks strike 13? You wonder. You want to read the next sentence. The story has its hooks in you. Last night I dreamt I went to Manderley again. Any male in the audience recognize this? No. It's Daphne du Maurier's great novel Rebecca, also filmed with Laurence Olivier. And this is another mysterious one where you wonder, what's Manderley? How can she be again? Did I start on the wrong page? Am I behind things? Immediately you're sucked in. You can do this with text in all kinds of ways. This is the most famous opening line from the 20th century, arguably. As Gregor Samsa woke one morning from uneasy dreams, he found himself transformed in his bed into a gigantic insect. Kafka's Metamorphosis. He's actually a dung beetle. But you can do it with other media as well. For example, this is a great work of imaginary art from the 18th century by Piranesi. It's called Imagine Prisons. It's not by Escher, though people often think that. If you let your eye follow this, you'll find the curious thing. This gets more confusing the more you look at it. If you try to trace an archway, you can't quite see where it starts or where it ends. It's uncomfortable. You find a staircase that goes off in another direction. If you drill your eyes down really far, you might be able to make out individual figures. But things are still cloudy. It's shadowy. There's a sense of mystery and incompletion which draws your eyes on. Map makers used to know this. The things that people loved were the here be dragons parts, the monsters, the gaps, the things that weren't very clear. Here's a different question to ask. Let me ask you, just volunteers for an answer. What isn't a story? What in the universe is not part of the story? I said Twilight, so you can't use that. What, anybody? You know I'll call on you if you don't volunteer. What? A single number. So 5. How come? Yeah. I don't know if you can hear him okay. This is the wonderful Lee saying, out of context, the number 5, there's no story. It makes you want to do something to it. It was 5 o'clock when the story began, but by itself there's nothing. What else? What else isn't a story? A chair? No. You can make a story about it, but it's pretty quiet. No other volunteers? A grocery list. Yes, there's a really great science fiction novel about a grocery list called The Canticle for Leibowitz, which is after nuclear war, someone finds a grocery list, and it looks like science fiction, because it's very strange, so they end up illuminating it. But a grocery list, there's no verb. This is a puzzle question, and there's no really good answer. The more you think about it, the more you shape out how you understand how narratives work, how people work. For my book, I came up with a terrible definition. Whenever you see a long definition, it means they have failed and they're trying to cram everything they can into the definition. You know, for a given audience, which is true. I mean, some stories don't work. Oftentimes, a humanist will tell me, what isn't a story? Numbers, plural. Statistics, not a story. Then a scientist will say, that's wrong. Statistics do tell a story. So for a given audience, a story is a sequence of content anchored to a problem which engages that audience with emotion and meaning. The problem is actually, surprisingly, the hardest thing. People love making stories with no problems. They love making stories that are perfectly calm and soothing, where nothing possibly goes wrong. There's nothing deadlier than that. But people love doing that. So you have to spike it with a problem. Now, that's all storytelling. Digital storytelling is what I'm talking about. And when you put those words together, they often sound confusing. What's digital about storytelling? How can you tell stories with computers? Here's a reason why. Every time humanity comes up with a new technology, we figure out ways of telling stories with it. We do it with TV, we did it with records, we did it with radio, we did it with a book. In case you ever talk to somebody who hates digital technology, I recommend going back to a Socratic dialogue called the Phaedrus, where 2,400 years ago or so, Socrates gives you the first reason to hate new media. I don't know if you've read this. He complains about a new medium, that if you use it, it'll make you sound stupid. If you use this new medium, it'll wreck your memory. If you use this, you'll become boring. This new technology, this writing, is going to ruin everything. It's wonderful to read. It sounds so familiar. Replace writing with Wikipedia, for example, and you've got it. But whenever we come up with a technology, we figure out ways of telling stories with it, even the 8-track. So it's just really not a coincidence that the minute we come with digital technologies, that we would use them to create narratives, to share personal stories. Now, there's a background to this. And some of you might recognize some of this. I'll whiz by it very quickly. Back in the 1990s, when the web was born, people figured out ways of telling stories with web pages. They used hypertext, which actually dates back to the 80s. They used early multimedia, which looks embarrassingly bad now, but they tried it. And at the same time, you had art creator communities and fan communities dating back to the 60s that are moving online. People who loved a movie or a book or a TV show would build stories anew online. These would be browser-based, and they wouldn't last long. In fact, probably the most famous form of digital storytelling from the 1990s, you all know, the email chain letter or the email hoax letter. These have to be stories. Seriously, grab one of these. It has to be a story to compel your grandmother to forward it to you. Or that one classmate who says, maybe it's true of Mrs. Fields' cookies, I don't know. People love these. There's actually archives of these on the web. They're really fascinating to see. It's a whole terrible art form. In fact, they've been parodied in many, many ways. So this is one, for example. Do you know the Nigerian chain letter? Yeah, so this is one. Dear American, I need to ask you to support an urgent secret business relationship with a transfer of funds of great magnitude. I am Ministry of the Republic of America. My country has had crisis that has caused the need for large transfer of funds of $800 billion US. Sound familiar? This is TARP. If you would assist me in this transfer, it would be most profitable for you. I mean, this is funny until you start crying and realizing, no, this actually happened and we all answered this chain letter. We also used other technologies, namely Flash, to do some multimedia storytelling in the 1990s. This is a wonderful British site called Dreaming Methods, which is still there. What they would do is produce an interface like this, an inbox, where you would move through the interface and pull down different bits of the story. So clicking here would give you 3 pages about one character. Clicking here would take that character back in time. Clicking there would give you some more of the context and so on. That's all backstory. Here's my favorite example to use. Is anybody here claustrophobic? No? Surely somebody here is afraid of being buried alive or anything? Well, good. I'll move on. This is a little story called Ted's Caving Journal. As you might guess, it's about a spelunker named Ted, who has found a new cave deep underground that nobody else has ever been to. This is the cave crawler's just dream story. And he and his friend and their dog decide to go exploring it. And you can read it. Now, this is a great 1990s web design example. You see the black background, the white font, it's almost unreadable. You see the big slab of ads at the top. Angel Fire, I think, yeah. I mean, this is just great, horrible stuff to read. And at the end of this page, there's a click here for the next page, and you get the next entry. And as you're reading it, there's multimedia. There's a picture, so you have rocks. Oh, look at this. Look, it's purple on black. Oh, it's almost unreadable. But you can go back and forth. You know, if you missed something, you go back and read the previous page, so it's kind of multilinear. It lives in a browser. And then you get to the part here where as they go on, the cave is actually somehow cursed or wrong. They hear things underground which they shouldn't hear. Things start disappearing from their bags. They get more and more creeped out and more scared until finally we have this entry which says, well, we figure out the end of the cave sequence. We know what we're going to do. We know what we're going to find. And we'll post our story right when we come back, okay? Love, Ted. Click next. There is no next page. Ooh. That's the end. It's pretty cool, right? It's a simple little cheesy story, right? But it's a story. It's a clear story by any sense of the term. And it's there on the web in the 1990s. Now, also the 1990s, on the West Coast, a group of theater activists and community activists in San Francisco wanted to figure out how to get you, anybody, just any average person, not a video creator. Hello, Brian. No, just any person at all, to make a video. And they wanted to make sure that it could be done as cheaply as possible. Now, the Center for Digital Storytelling was born out of this. They came up with a curriculum which worked. And it works to this day. And they've been teaching it ever since. It's basically a workshop that goes for 3 days. Any person, they had a storefront for a while. So literally someone walking off the street could write, create, and end up with a short video roughly 3 minutes long. I'll give you an example. What went into that was a voiceover. So the author was trained to write a story, and then record it. Along with that was a soundtrack, so you had the guitar music, and including in that was a series of photographs and one video clip. That was the whole story. That's how the CDS, Center for Digital Storytelling workshop works. It takes somebody who has no technical experience and brings them to that point. It's extremely effective, I think. We're not looking at professional, polished work. We're looking at amateur work. But it gives people a level of skill where they can do more of it. One of the reasons is, come on in, it's okay. These are personal stories. I mean, this is a woman talking about her mother, as close to a personal connection as you can get. At the group I work with, we thought this was amazing. We made some of these ourselves. I won't show you my first one. It's been destroyed. I have several that I will show you if you're curious. But we started making these and showing teachers how to make these. And we gave it a couple little twists. We said that the story should be about campuses, and we allow people to do non-personal stories, which is kind of fun. So you'd have a political scientist who would say, I want to do a story about Southern African politics and why it's interesting. Fine, and we help them with that. Digital storytelling, when you hear that, think of that as a kind of trademark. Digital storytelling has been very popular through K through 12, higher education in the US. We've seen many examples of it. We've seen a master's program at Ball State. There have been cases in London and in Australia. In Britain, actually, the BBC did 2 nationwide digital storytelling projects. So when you hear that term, digital storytelling, first sense of the term, it means that pedagogy, that curriculum, that specific way of producing digital video. All that I showed you was in place by the year 2000. Still in place. They keep doing it. Wonderful people. If you're curious, get online, contact them. Wonderful people. But the digital world moved on. We've added other things. Web 1.0 became Web 2.0. And let me explain. The web has been pretty active over the past 12 years. And we've been using it to tell stories. So for example, how many of you have ever written a blog post? How many of you currently maintain a blog? Good for you, good for you. So blogs naturally lend themselves to storytelling. Think about it. On the one hand, they're the easiest web publishing tool that we've had for a long time. So if you want to write a story and put it to the web, pow, a blog is good. But also, they look kind of like diaries. They go backwards. We're in reverse chronological order, but they work. And we've used diaries to tell stories since we've invented diaries. There are a lot of examples of this in print. So people have started making fictional narratives. This is the first one I could find from 2003, where a woman writes to say, "Hi, I'm on the run from my husband. He's a very dangerous man. I'm appealing to the world for help and for solace as I fly. Can you help me?" And every few days, she would update and say, "I'm in a new hotel. I can't tell you the name, but I would love to hear advice about getting new passports," and so on. She's a flight risk ran for about a year. People have taken other things to the web blogging platform as well. There's a large battery of people who've taken content that's already existing and republished it to the web using a blog. This is a World War I diary from a Canadian soldier who, he's dead now, but they took all of his papers, his notebooks, letters that he wrote, journal entries, put to the web in chronological order. So every day in 1917, they published it to this day in 2012. In fact, this has become so interesting and significant that the idea of a networked book has come up, that you can read a book online, publish a book online, and interact with it socially through comments, through other blog posts, and we've seen more examples of this happen. In fact, there's the Institute for the Future of the Book has said this is a new way we'll be having ebooks, that the idea of an ebook contained in a device is too simple. Instead, books will be open and written in a networked environment. On top of this, there's a wide variety of blogs and wikis based on current books because they need documentation and support. For example, how many of you guys watched Lost when it was on? And so no one's happy about that because they saw the end, right? Yeah, I saw Lost, yeah. First season was good, right? But there's a Lostpedia, which is this enormous resource about Lost. People have been doing this for quite a few books. On Twitter, when you talk about Twitter storytelling, people get freaked out and say, "How can you do that? Twitter's stupid. All people tweet about is their dog." People have actually been tweeting stories like mad. For example, this is actually a project, Twitter fiction. And in 140 sentences, 140 characters, it's like a dare. They try to tell complete stories. As she left, the sun broke through and hope sprung up like an explosion. He knew it, sensed it. A dreadful feeling shot up to his mind just a moment before she spoke. Little short one-post sentences. We're here. People have used storytelling in nonfiction sense. Shortest, saddest science fiction story. Robot looking for signs of life has broken down in New Zealand coal mine. True, and very sad. Oh my God, looking for life and it breaks down underground in a pit. Oh my God, how can this be sadder? In fact, we use creative writing projects on Twitter. And one way of doing this is to share a Twitter handle among a whole crowd of students. Now then you take turn posting, and you can read through a crazy round-robin story as it goes. We've been doing this with archival materials. So right now, there is a Twitter going on at the Battle of Arras in 1917, a World War I Western Front battle. Someone has been doing the American Civil War. There's also the American Revolution one, where on today's date, they tell you what was happening in 1776. You can follow the history right away. A college out in the West Coast took a major American poet, and they tweeted selections from his verse, which sounds almost obscene if you don't like Twitter, until you realize that this short context forces you to pay attention like the way poetry forces you to pay attention to a line or a word. So you can go through here and read this Robinson Jeffers archive. It's also a good way of outreaching for their archive. Aphorisms work beautifully on Twitter. They have to be short. There are at least 3 Oscar Wilde aphorism Twitter feeds right now, for example. Now, wikis can be used for storytelling, but it's hard. They're mostly good as a tool to help you tell stories or as a resource. This is an excerpt from the most bizarre literary experiment in the 21st century, an attempt to have the human race collaboratively write a book together. I don't know if you guys followed this. Penguin Publishers said, "Here's a wiki page. Come on, anybody with a web connection, write a novel with us." And they did. You can buy it. It's pretty awful, but it is a complete novel. And in fact, it forked at one point. It split in half. There's a group of people who were obsessed with one shall we say, trope, and they actually have their own separate book now because they were just so obsessed. They peeled right off. Can you tell a story with a wiki? They could. But look at the questions that they had to ask in order to make this happen. Can the collective, millions of people, literally, create a believable fictional voice? How does a plot find any sort of coherent trajectory when different people have a different idea about how a story should end or even begin? The guys who wrote Lost should have paid attention to this, I think. Now, you can tell stories with PowerPoint, usually badly. And in fact, I think one of the keys to making a good PowerPoint is to have mystery to it. If it's all clear, there's no reason to press the next slide or bullet point. But you can also use them for creative writing. This is a friend of mine who wrote this as she was driving across New England. I didn't bring a raincoat or an umbrella. I hope the power doesn't go off. I need power at this meeting. She stretched this across a slide using PowerPoint, a photo that she took when she was doing this. But then she posted it to the web using a web hosting platform called SlideShare. What's neat about this is that you can see it, you can download it, you can read it, you can share it, you can comment on it, you can also find other things like this. So the story has been kind of freed to the PowerPoint silo and unleashed into the Web 2.0 world. In fact, other people can embed it in other pages and then build a circle of readers and reactors to it as you go along. Quick show of hands. How many of you guys share photos to the web through Facebook? How many of you have shared photos that you don't want to share anymore? That's okay. How many of you have seen something? No, I'm not going to ask that. Flickr is, until Facebook blew up into its enormous size, Flickr was the world's biggest repository of images. You can do a lot of things with these images, and one of them was to arrange them into a story sequence. So this is a group which has a single rule. You take 5 images, put them in a row, give it a title, nothing else. No other text, no other information, you can't vary the sequence. Some of these stories are pretty awful, some of them are just cryptic, some of them I think work pretty well. Here's an example. This one's called Gender Miscommunication. Picture 1. So you can see her looking over her shoulder, you can see this guy in his sweatshirt, and you can see that couple who are being very happy in the corner. Slide 2. There's her face. Slide 3. She's imitating that she's cold, right? Remember Freytag's triangle? This is the climax right here. Slide 4. Slide 5. I love how happy he looks. He's like, see, I did the right thing. And she has that unbelievable sadness. In the background, remember the couple from page 1? They just came back and they're going at it. Right? Gender miscommunication. It's a single story. It works pretty cleanly together. You can do that with photos you take yourself, or you can remix them from somewhere else. The Library of Congress took a whole bunch of color photos from the 30s and put them on the web, uncopyrighted, to be shared and used by people. You can remix them. It's a tremendous, tremendous resource. This is one. It's called it's actually called Farm to Food. It's 5 images. Here's the first one. These are potato barrels, and they're picking potatoes. Image 2. It's 3. 4. These prices might not be familiar to you right now, but image 5. This is an image that just haunts me. Looking at their faces, looking at the intensity of their bodies. But from farm to food in one sequence. No main character, no clear plot, but I think this succeeds pretty well as a story. You can do this with other media, including audio. In fact, when podcasts started off, it was a big surprise. People in Silicon Valley figured out that you could tell stories with sound. It's a cool thing. They're like, yeah, you can do this with sound. All these old radio guys would be like, yeah, we know about that. We used to do that back in the 20th century. So here's an example. This is one that's called the Memory Palace. There's more. It's a very good story. But you can hear with only 2 things, Nick's voice and a very, very light, simple soundtrack. And I don't think that music actually matters. You could clearly tell a story. And wherever you are, imagine being in a car with your earbuds, or being out for a walk, or at night. You can hear all of this. The past 10 years, storytelling by podcast has been growing like mad. There are tons of examples. We've been doing this web video. We have lots of videos that people love watching as stories. That's kind of obvious, right? When you think about TV or movies, people have been making stuff. In fact, one of the great things about everything I've been showing you is that everything I've been showing you is done by amateurs, not by professionals. Here's an example. I don't know if you guys follow the Lonely Girl 15 story. Anyway, so this is fake webcam footage about a girl who's going to a new high school. Her name was Bree, and she was kind of nervous about her high school because it was a new school. She was excited about her parents, and she had a friend who was a boy who wasn't a boyfriend. No, just a boy who was a friend, right? And that's it. And she would talk to you about her life. And as it would go on, you watch her webcams, and she was kind of cute, and she had toys, like this little Muppet, and she would talk about things. And then you got the sensation that things weren't quite right. You couldn't really learn what her parents' religion was, but it involved lots of planning and preparation. Her high school was more challenging, and her friend, who was a boy but not her boyfriend, kept telling her to do new things. It began to get really complex and threatening over time. What was interesting about that was what I just described could be a TV show. It could be a movie you see in a theater. But because it was on the web, different things happened. People made videos in response. So if you search Lonely Girl 15 on YouTube, you get fans saying, Bree, I hope you're okay. Don't listen to that geometry teacher. There's something terribly wrong with him. You get people who did remixes of this, set to music, or made parodies of it. People wrote short stories, and they started sharing it like mad. The whole thing was a hoax. The woman was actually in her 20s, and the germ of this was from a bunch of liberal arts college students, always a bad sign, right? And they came up with this, and it spread across the web as a story. It's a really new way of doing stories. Here's another example. This is a clip from a project. If I bring this up, I can single-handedly stall the entire World Wide Web. Yes. Oh, okay. Just by touching it. This is a project called Marble Hornets. Like Lonely Girl, it's a bit of a hoax. The idea is a student filmmaker was making a movie called Marble Hornets, starring some of his fellow students, and he stopped, unfinished, because he was scared and left. And he left a box of video with his friend, so his friend could go through it if he wanted to. And as he goes through it, you see things are creepier and more mysterious and inexplicable than you could possibly want. This is the first bit of it. The whole series is a bunch of web clips. They're all labeled tape number 1, tape number 3. This one has no sound. You just have to watch it closely. Entry 6. I found the following clip at the beginning of a new tape, TV tapes. This could be the continuation of entry number 1, which will place at the end of the tape. It's hard to see, but it's supposed to be. Looking at a car, looking through a window. Handheld Steadicam. You can see a giant man walking past a window. And that's the end of it. Mysterious, hard to make out. Makes you curious. You might want to see what goes on. I do recommend watching those late at night if you're alone and with as few lights on as possible to get the maximum effect. You will never hear the name Slender Man without shaking afterwards. But it was all web-based, all little clips, a new form of doing stories. You can do this with Facebook. One novelist said that Facebook is a collective novel we are telling to each other, which may have something to do with it. You can make all kinds of stories on Facebook, including fake ones. So this is the Hamlet on Facebook. Update, Horatio thinks he saw a ghost. Hamlet thinks it's annoying when your uncle marries your mother after your dad dies. Update, the king thinks Hamlet's annoying. Laertes thinks Ophelia can do better. Hamlet's father is now a zombie. The king poked the queen poked the king back. Hamlet and the queen are no longer friends. And the bottom, Hamlet is now a fan of daggers. You can do a lot with this. There are many. Of course, every Jane Austen novel has one. Charles Bingley is buying a house. Mrs. Bennet became a fan of Charles Bingley. Kitty Bennet can't stop coughing. I mean, you could do any of these. There's a very awful Shakespeare play that had, called Titus Andronicus, which is on this, which I really, really like. But you can be even more creative. So at Reno, a bunch of librarians took archives of students who had gone there and gave them web pages. The students are dead now. They're from the 1920s. But give them a little sense of history and time, which is pretty amazing. A Polish archive made a Facebook page for a young boy who perished in a concentration camp in the 1940s. It's one of the most heartbreaking Facebook pages I've ever seen, and a very powerful way to dramatize a personal story. Everything I've just showed you is historical, established, production level, already at work. And they're beginning to change. We're making new formats all the time. This is one called VoiceThread, which is hard to explain, because there's nothing like it on Earth. You take a piece of media, stick it in the middle, and you annotate it with sound, video, or text by typing. That's all it is. It's pretty strange. That's all social media. Or some of social media. There's more to still talk about. But let me change the pace. Storytelling migrates to social media. It also migrates to that most feared thing in the universe. Gaming. So just as a recap, if you haven't been paying attention to the past 20 years, gaming has become the world's second largest culture industry. The only thing that makes more money than it is music. About 8 years ago, there was a question, what makes more money, video, film, TV, or games? Games shot past and remained there ever since. Gaming is an enormous planetary industry. It's changed our world in a lot of ways. The median age of gamers is somewhere between 30 and 40. It has changed your hardware and software. If you don't play games or if you hate games, I'll tell you how it's changed your life. Your laptop can do Skype and YouTube video. Here's a hint. It's not because you play Microsoft Word. It's because Dell and Apple and all the other companies know that you as a person on Earth are likely to be a computer gamer. Therefore, they've given you a great video card and a great sound card. Plus, the diversity of games. It's not as diverse as print right now. Think as diverse as movies. You've got subgenres, genres, you've got favorite kinds of games, you have niche games, target all kinds of audiences. There are games aimed at 13-year-old boys, games aimed at middle-aged women, games that target all kinds of audiences. In fact, if you think it's not big enough, here's one little datum. Cityville has dropped in numbers. It only has 44 million players right now. It's very tragic. It was at 60 for a while. 44 million! I mean, think, the entire time zone of the United States, right, is playing a single game. I mean, that's pretty enormous to see. The genres of games have become quite complex. This is a game from California that Californians played as a state to simulate earthquakes. This is a math game aimed at New York City school kids. On the top there is a pro-global warming game. Hint, it's sarcastic. If you play the game, you get points for ruining the Earth. If you don't suppress Greenpeace fast enough, you lose points. The more carbon, the better. Same guys also did McDonald's game, which I can't even describe. In the middle, this is a game making fun of standing in line at the airport. Because it's an iPhone game, you can play it standing in line at the airport. TSA people do not think it's that funny, but it's up to you to judge. So, let me stop. All those games are games, right? But how can games tell a story? Games and stories aren't the same thing. It's a category error, right? Not necessarily. If you look closely at games, and by games I mean almost any game you can think of, they do a few things uniquely which make games storyfied, or actually stories. For example, the intent of even the smallest game, if you play Angry Birds, is to immerse you. They try to hit you with as much different media as possible. So you get visuals, you get images, you get sound, trying to suck you in. If you haven't played a major Xbox game or a major PC game, please do so, and you'll see that there's symphonic in their design. They try to lure you in and swamp your senses. It's a very 19th century approach in many ways. They also have things called cutscenes. If you haven't played a game, you'll probably recognize this anyway. This is an animation or a short video that plays when you're not playing. It's a kind of reward for getting to a point, or it's context about what's happening. So if you see the number 5, it explains why number 5 is important. There are tutorials as well. And in fact, people in education technology study these because the gaming tutorials are good at teaching you how to play games. It's often quite disturbing to realize that games have actually become pedagogical objects. On top of that, games use their interfaces to bring things home. How many of you guys play with an iPhone or an iPad? So when you play a game, like Angry Birds, right, it uses the screen's advantages. So you have to use your hand to do things. And it becomes a very tactile game. How many of you play with the Xbox? Oh, only a few of you are Xbox players? The rest of you have to consider this an assignment. I mean, if you grab one of the interfaces, one of the things it does is it will actually buck in your hands and shake to tell you that something's going on as part of the story. So I mean, all these things help accent stories, but at the center of it, they already have story content. A lot of games, not all, clearly establish a setting or a place. How many of you have played any of the Mass Effect games? Good. Femshep or Maleshep? Okay, good, very good. All right. If you haven't heard of it, Mass Effect is a giant space opera game with galaxy-spanning action, robots, and androids, and it does tremendous work in trying to build a setting. Everything from the sound quality to the design of people's clothing. It also has characters. And this sounds goofy. How can a game have characters? If you think about Pong, is the character 5 pixels? No. These are characters that are often motion captured, or they're animated, and they're often voiced. Hollywood actors will routinely do voices for games to give them extra depth. In fact, the characters are kind of fun. You guys are all the most famous computer game actor of all time because you actually play a part in a game by deciding things or playing a role. On top of that, they have plots. They have stories that advance over time. If you play a World War II game or you play a mystery game, it takes you through it piece by piece. On top of that, there has to be mystery. What's the simplest computer game you guys have ever played? Anybody? What's the simplest, most basic computer game? Yeah, Aaron. Yeah, that's pretty basic. Yeah, you guys all know Minesweeper? If you haven't seen the movie of Minesweeper, it's hilarious. Yeah. They do like a Hollywood war movie of Minesweeper. It's really, really funny. But there's always a mystery when you play Minesweeper because you can't tell where the next little flag is. If you play Angry Birds, the mystery is what the next level will hold. If you play Call of Duty, the mystery is where the Nazis are going to attack you next. I mean, at a very basic level, these have to be mysterious. If you know where everything is, you stop playing it immediately. There's also a kind of social penumbra around all stories. You go to the movie theater, you walk out, you talk to your friend about what you just saw. Maybe on the phone, you Twitter them about it, or you call somebody and talk about it. Online, game stories are tremendous. People love talking about games. They're walkthroughs of game. There's even a subgenre of YouTube video called Let's Play, which is someone talking you through the whole story of a game. And of course, we love making stories about stories. A game might be pretty dull or not very storyfied. People love making fan fiction stories about it. I mean, there's lots of ways that games tell stories. I can tell you more if we like. Here are a couple of examples. This is what's an example of what's called a casual game. If you don't know the category, a casual game is small, either free or very cheap, small memory, doesn't take up a lot, and you can do it while you're doing something else. So for example, if you're playing Halo, you can't do anything else while you're playing it. It's a space combat game, and it's massively immersive and very challenging and very fast. If you're playing Minesweeper, you can play another game at the same time. It's that simple and that's easy. This is called Coma. Plays in a browser, casual game. And when you wake up, you're this little guy, a little animated something or other. And you wake up in a nice green room with curtains and a bed, and you make little happy sounds as you move around. And you get to move. And you move out of the room, and you walk into this beautiful whole hall. And it's got these gorgeous windows. And you can't quite make it out, but at the top right is a little graffiti that says, "This world is a lie." And you move to the next room, and it's outside. It's beautiful. There's grass and there's sun. And you're thinking, this world is a lie? What happened? Mystery hook is baited. And you keep exploring, trying to figure out what goes on. I don't want to spoil it for you because the story is actually pretty clever. You can play this in a browser while on the next tab you're doing your assignment in Google Docs. Here's another example, another scary, terrifying game. This is the only example I can know of a game that is a horror story and a parody of Ayn Rand. If you don't think Ayn Rand is sufficiently self-parodic, it's called BioShock. And it is, if you haven't played it, I recommend watching Let's Plays of it because it's a really creative game. But the reason I'm telling you about this as a story is as follows. When you begin the game, it's a first-person perspective game. So if you're holding your console and you turn around, your character turns around, you're in an airplane. You can tell it's 1959 because you look at a calendar, it says 1959 on it. And you're sitting in a plane, and your character, without you doing anything, this is a kind of cutscene at this point, looks through some photos. So you're thinking about memory. The plane goes down, crashes in the sea, and you can't do anything, which is a bit claustrophobic, a bit disturbing, because you can't move. You keep moving your controller, and your character starts bobbing in the sea, going down a little bit. They're shaking the controller. You can't do anything until finally it lets you move. It's teaching you how to play the game. How to turn left, how to turn right, how to move very fast. And you can hear the sound, splash, splash, splash. And behind you, the plane is on fire. And an oil slick is spreading all around you. And it's burning. You can hear the crackle of the flames. I hope I can do something with this damn game. And finally, if you keep turning around, you see a little island the size of this chimney, and it has a door on it. You can walk up to the door, and you go in. There's no reason not to. There's just fire and death outside. And the door opens, and a huge light turns on, and you see statues with enormous wings overhead and a staircase spiraling down. And a big statue of a man called Andrew Ryan. You don't know who he is, but it's a story, giving you a character. As you go down the stairs, there's a bathysphere, a little micro submarine. You can't go anywhere else. There's the how to open doors button. Press that, you walk in. Bathysphere goes away. A recording plays. It tells you you're about to go to a utopian community under the sea that was started by an Ayn Rand fan who wanted you to have a community where scientists were free to develop whatever they wanted without the shackles of state or ethics, where anything can be done in this country. It's a wonderful place. You dock, and it's not so wonderful after all. What I just described could be the opening for a movie or the opening of a short story. It's in fact the opening of a very successful game that you get to play through. My point is, games will tell stories. They tell stories a lot. Now, I want to end this by getting a little futuristic on you. I want to talk about the far future, say April 17th or so. How many of you have a phone that is not a smartphone? Don't be shy. You're with the majority of humanity. The most powerful and commonplace computing tool in the world is the feature phone. It's not a dumb phone, it's a feature phone. Seriously, that's the name. Mobile devices have been changing the whole world, and the US has finally figured this out. I'll show you why. Can you recognize what's in this photo? I love this. You can learn about technology sometimes where it was. This is a phone room from a hotel in New York State. It was a room for all children. It was dedicated to phones. Phones, those are machines. Anyway, these are counters where they had payphones stacked up. And they can't do anything else with this room now. So they clean it, and it says empty, not closet. No one knows what to do. Mobile phones came. They changed it all. So how do phones work for stories? I'm going to give you 3 ideas. I want these to seep into your mind. These are big ideas about mobile technology. And if they haven't occurred to you so far, please bear them in mind, because we're just beginning to see mobile change everything. Here's one. From 1988, computer scientist named Mark Weiser came up with the idea of what he called ubiquitous computing. If you ever hear the term, it doesn't mean lots of computers everywhere. What it means is computers that have woven their way into everyday life so that we don't notice them anymore. You walk into an office, someone has a desktop, you don't say, look, desktop computer. No, of course they have a desktop computer, naturally, right? It's an office place. Some of you older people here might remember in the 1970s and 80s, there's a thing called a car computer. If you bought a new car, it'd say, on board, a car computer. There's a selling point, like extra radios or something. Now, of course you have car computer. What you're worried about is a blue screen of death in your car. That's different. Weiser is saying that mobile devices now are just woven into everyday life, so that if you take photos with phones, that's no longer extraordinary. Here's the second one. A computer scientist at IBM came up with what he called the world board idea. And when I read this, I thought, this is beautiful science fiction. It's not. His idea was, you can tie digital data to a physical point on the Earth's surface. It's not hard to do. GPS, right? Well, what if you could do a lot of that? And so somebody walking through a space could hit digital data in the physical world. So, you walk over here, and your phone lights up and says, oh, here's a picture for you. You go over here, here's a photo. Over here is a text file. On the door is a sign, and so on. He came up with this in the 1990s. I think even IBM thought he was a little out there. He said, well, what if everyone has handheld computers? And they're all online. Imagine that, the far-off future. So he said, well, what if you could update this? So I stopped by your office, by your door, and upload a document to your door. He said, well, if you could do this for a building, why not a town? Why not the world? So he calls this world board, like a web board or a message board. Crazy idea, right? We're halfway there right now. I'll explain why. Or you think of mobile devices as device ecology. How many of you guys own Kindle hardware, the e-readers? Wow, great. Now, have you read Kindle books on that and on another device too, like a phone or, yeah. So think about it as an ecosystem, right? You've got multiple locations for the same content that circulates back and forth among them all, right? That's another way of thinking of mobile devices. Well, for stories, all those principles have now changed the way we perceive stories. So right now, some of you are probably Twittering or Facebooking or emailing or instant messaging or doing something else about what we're saying now. You could be saying, God, that guy's beard scares me. Or you could be saying, I think this is crazy, stories should only be in books, whatever. You're back-channeling. Back-channeling is now kind of what we assume happens in any event, in any story event. If you go to a movie theater, Hollywood is paying attention to the texts you send Friday night for the opening of a movie, because that will determine how successful it is Saturday afternoon, Saturday night. That whole back channel is how we perceive stories now. If you see a play, or if you're in a concert, or in a lecture hall, you get to have that back channel attached to it. That's one way. Here's another. You can attach stories to different parts of the world, and you can find out more stories where you are. Google Goggles, try saying that sometime, it's not easy, is a tool that lets you search what you're looking at as you walk around. So you can go to different places and pull down data about where they are. The European Union had a project called iTacitus, which let you go to different European buildings, historical sites, and pull down, as you looked at them through your phone, the documents from when they were built in the 1600s. So you could look at this, find the floor plan, pull it away, see what Da Vinci thought, pull it away, and explore. You can increasingly layer stories onto the world around you. Now you might know some of this from the term augmented reality. It's an old term, we haven't replaced it yet. The AR just refers to what I talked about before, taking digital data and pinning it down to the physical world. You can use this with GPS. Just last night, when I was driving here through Cleveland, boy was I using GPS. Well, there's a roundabout and it's square. That's interesting, how did I do this? And the GPS unit told me what to do. You turn left. Turn left, Brian. It always feels kind of condescending to me, recalculating, like you schmuck, right? And you can do this with handhelds, of course. We have lots of examples of this, like Yelp and other tools, but you can do more. On the left is a picture from Skidmore College, upstate New York, where you're walking around campus. There's a campus tour on your phone. You point it at buildings, and on your phone comes down information about that building. On the top right, if you're in Europe, you can download programs from a company called Layar, point them at a town, and real estate values will appear over each building you look at. That's not intrusive, that's public information. But it is so successful now, I don't know if you can make it out from the photo, that there's too much augmented reality information. They have to figure out ways of getting metadata on it now. Librarians might have a calling there. And there's art. On the bottom right, some of you Beatles fans might recognize this. If you go to a certain district in London, point your phone at the street, you can see three gentlemen walking with one way and one the other way. See their feet all different ways. In fact, we can just try to edit the world and add stories and pull stories down from it. For example, in Rotterdam, they're building a major, major hall, and it wasn't done yet. But you could download a layer of how it would look, put it on your phone, stand in the construction site, and see how it changed the landscape of the city. Oh, that's blocked. No, it's not. Oh, I can see that. You could walk outside of it and see how it altered the whole entire landscape in the cityscape. You can use QR codes to embed mysteries and secrets just about anywhere. This is a building in Holland where they've covered the outside of it with QR codes. In fact, it's hard to tell what the building is for unless you use your phone. You can make art, and you can actually layer digital information onto the sky itself. We have a whole world board for telling stories right now. Now, lots of things are happening with this world. We're making new games for stories. And as a last footnote, or last example, I'll give you one. If you remember the We Are the 99% movement from last year, there was a Tumblr blog. It was the second biggest example of collective digital storytelling I've ever seen. If you didn't look at it, please go look at the We Are the 99% Tumblr blog. All it was people who uploaded pictures that were short micro stories, themselves, their face, and a written story of how they are the 99%, however they understand that. This became viral. This became enormously used. And in fact, the Obama administration this year is running a massive digital storytelling campaign to support its re-election. So the White Houses are not usually cutting-edge technology places, kind of the opposite. But listen to this. You can send a few paragraphs about how your latest phone banking gig went, or why you're in for 2012, share a latest chart, upload a photo of sorts, pass along jokes, send us posts. We'd like this Tumblr to be a huge collaborative storytelling effort, a place for people across the country to share what's going on in our respective corners of it. If the White House is organizing a national digital storytelling campaign, I think digital storytelling is something that's not insignificant. Now, we've been going on for some time. I could show you some more stuff, but I'd rather hear from you guys. Where have you been seeing stories in the digital world around you? And I want to hear from everybody. Don't be shy, I forbid it, and don't be embarrassed. If you say something that's embarrassing, no one will notice. It's just good. Ask a question. Yes, you in the back, you raised your hand 3 times as a gamer, yes? Who are you?
I'm Alan Guerrero. I'm in the class.
Hi.
One of the things that I'm pretty big into is alternate reality gaming, which is a big emerging trend that has combinations of like storytelling, social media, and gaming.
What are you playing?
Right now I'm following the Project Prometheus viral marketing campaign for the movie Prometheus.
How is it?
It's kind of stalled. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with it. Nobody can figure it out. I don't know. And I'm also, there's one emerging right now that's for the movie Total Recall.
The remake?
Yeah, the remake. It's got it.
If it's good, let me know. I like to pay attention to it. How many of you guys have played with alternate reality games? See, this is good. This is good. You should know about this, because this is just, in case you feel that the world isn't strange enough, this will help you. Alternate reality games date back to the year 2000, although I've actually published on ways that they were anticipated earlier. There's a really odd movie called The Game, which anticipates some of this. An alternate reality game is a story with puzzles that's inserted into the world without warning. There's no boundary around them. So the first great alternate reality game was for, unfortunately, a pretty bad movie, Steven Spielberg's AI. And the way you found out about the game was by looking at the credits of the trailers. And in the credits was artificial intelligence consultant. Now, in the year 2000, we didn't have many of those. Artificial intelligence wasn't that good. It's not that great now. But if you Googled the person's name, you were taken to a web page. And it was her faculty web page at Bangalore World University, which doesn't exist. Bangalore World University had about 40 different pages, including a course catalog, campus tours, all copyrighted, 2032, 2020? There was a 1-800 number you could call for information of Bangalore, and you get information about it. You'd be like, what am I looking at? At no point in any of the web pages was there a sign saying Warner Brothers or part of the Steven Spielberg movie. It was just there on the web, natively. Next trailer came out, and if you looked at it closely, you could see in the credits certain words highlighted. If you put the words in, Googled it, you found more pages for a political campaign to stop sentient robots. And yes, it had lots of pages, and no connection to the first one, and so on. We call this experience the rabbit hole. You are going down the rabbit hole like Alice in Wonderland. You don't know where you're going to hit up. Ultimately, the guys making this game created 2,000 pages of web content, multiple sound clips, multiple video clips. People playing this called themselves the Collective Detective, and it started a whole genre. There are many games like this, and they're actually hard to tell where they begin or end. In fact, one slogan for it is, this is not a game when you play. It's fascinating for narrative purposes. I've got a chapter about it. I'd love to hear what you think. But I really recommend taking a look at ARGs. In fact, at Austin College in Texas, students are making ARGs as part of the senior project, which is pretty cool. I can't tell you much more about that because I'd have to kill you. Other stories. ARGs are a great one. What else? Yeah, please.
Marketing.
I'm sorry.
Marketing? Content marketing?
Yeah. See, everything I've been showing you has pretty much been amateur DIY stuff. But yeah, marketers love stories, right? I mean, that's how they see themselves as selling the story of Coke or these new jeans, right? Have you seen something recent that strikes you, or?
News stories.
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Video.
Yeah. don't know if you guys have seen this. Here.
Some of the stuff for Game of Thrones.
See, I just slowed down Lev's entire network. No, here we go. Okay.
You're on a guest network.
Very good answer. So this is a whole series of stories about learning to search. Right? But there's a little web video editor in this, so you can actually edit videos. I'm waiting to see Google do something with that. But yeah, marketing is all about storytelling. That's how marketing sees itself. And you'll see more and more of this. Like Super Bowl ads, for example, are developed to this acme pitch of 30-second stories. They have to be really concise and packed to tell you things. That's a good example. Where else are you seeing stories? In the digital environment around you. None? The story-free world? How sad. Yeah. Who are you? And keep going with the beard, by the way. It's good.
I'm thinking about, like I follow a lot of bands that are writing this blog, and I think a lot of bands are telling stories using all different types of media leading up to and after the story itself. So they'll do videos about soundtracks, and I think a lot of, from a marketing perspective, a lot of bands do especially at the very beginning.
Yep.
Follow the story all the way up until the end, so at that point we're already committed to the story.
There's a little ancestry to that. Let me see if I can find this. Oops, I misspelled it. We had a kind of century in the 20th century where once LPs got long enough to hold a number of tracks, you actually have a concept album, which would be a story. And those would often be released just as albums and nothing else. It's kind of a lost art form in many ways, but that would lead to it. These guys, Amanita Design, they're a Czech design studio. They make a lot of games. They did one for a band called Polyphonic Spree, and they did a whole game which was just a story about, it's kind of hard to describe, I don't know the band that well, but it was basically a backstory into that. Yeah, that's a good example. That's a really good example. How about the rest of you guys? Yeah. Uh-huh.
You can like, I don't know, download an app for your iPad like that, but it integrates the album with the different visual experiences, and you can kind of almost customize it and visual a little bit, things like that.
That's critical.
To be able to do that. Yeah, she's interesting. She does a lot of stuff that's really creative and on a little bit on the edge of experimentation. But what's your name? One thing that Paul has said was that really important you want to hear is that ability to remix the content and do different things with it. That's still problematic and tricky in a lot of ways. That's something you can do with social media that makes it a lot easier, is to grab content and make it into something else. There are a lot of different ways you can do this. Have you seen the different remixes of The Shining, for example? Yeah, so there's one, The Shining as a sitcom, which is pretty funny. I mean, horrifying and pretty funny at the same time. But remixing is a key part of digital storytelling. Excellent. Somebody else had a hand up. Or they lost control of their elbow and it was just flopping around. Well, I'll leave you with something practical, something very practical. If you want to do this stuff, if you want to actually make something, and you should, so if you want to make a story, you can think about a character that you want to put in a story. By the way, I'm saying story, and you're mentioning marketing. These can be nonfiction. So, I'm sorry, some of the ones I showed you were nonfiction, historical ones and so on. So it could be for an assignment, a historical figure that you need to explicate or that you want to develop. You want to think about what audience you want to speak this to and what kind of platform you want to use. If you want to make a game, think about interactive fiction. Very, very powerful tool, relatively easy to use and free. If you haven't used Flash, use it before Steve Jobs' ghost kills it. It's a way to make lots of interactive games. There are tons of social media. You can tell a story using any number of free tools. Right now, they're all pretty easy to do. But think of what platform you'd like and what that connects with. If you want to make a game, why someone would play a game. If you want to make a blog, how bloggers read posts. You want to think about project management, about doing this in a sane way, arranging materials ahead of time. You could follow the CDS and what they say has to be in a story, namely, a point of view. So if you're marketing or telling a news story, what point of view are you doing? A dramatic question, how will he survive? The emotional content, which is hard. People often forget to put emotional content in stories. I went for a trip. It was very nice. I took photos. Look at 3 of them. I went home. The end. And you think that's a narcotic. It's not a trip, but you also want to have soundtrack. And this is tricky. People who do film studies keep forgetting that soundtracks exist, and they mess us up for the rest of us. The sound is so critical. You can do so much with just sound. For example, let me ask you, everybody, just for a second, close your eyes, say nothing, and listen for the next 10 seconds. Now open. What did you hear? I'm sorry, I couldn't. That beeping noise? Whatever they are, behind you over there. What else did you hear? Mm-hmm. What else? There's a. Yeah, you can hear butts on seats. How about that noise behind me? It's kind of whirring noise. It's the fan, right? The vent. It's hard to pay attention to sound. We're trained not to. We're kind of immersed in a lot of sound, a lot of distraction. But once you hear sound, it changes everything you do. You can record a story entirely in sound. On top of that, it's important to put a story in time. Charles Dickens had a great rival named Wilkie Collins, who wrote wonderful mystery and suspense stories. It was a big hit. Someone asked him, "What's the secret of your success, Mr. Collins?" He said, "Easy. Think of the audience, make them cry, make them laugh, and make them wait." Think about TV soap opera. Think about sequels. Think about cliffhangers. That's the secret for doing web storytelling. Always that little delay, that wait. And keep it coming. I'm going to let you guys go. It's almost 6 o'clock. If you want to talk more about storytelling, please stick around. If not, thank you for coming. Go tell stories, and I'll see you online. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.